Hey Manna fam, happy Friday. I've really enjoyed going through this week Isaiah chapter 6 verse 8 with you and what it means to understand God's calling in our life and then live it out. So the last couple of days we've unpacked what it means to understand general callings, something we're all called to as believers, and then specific callings, something that each of us have that's unique to us that God has called us to. And I'm really excited for today because today we're going to talk about the courage to answer yes when God calls. And so to give you context in this verse, God has shared some bad news that needs to be delivered to Israel, and then he gives the big line, "Who shall I send? Who will go for me?" And then we get to Isaiah's answer. There's no hesitation, there's no equivocation, there's no caveats. He just says, Va omar hinani shelacheni. Here am I, send me. I love the raw, simple, no hesitations, honest courage in his answer. Because it's bad news. It's not going to be fun to deliver, and it might not be received well, but he doesn't have any hesitation. He understands this is God's calling. This is what I've been called to in this season. I'm going to say yes. And I think that can be tough for us to do sometimes because God's calling isn't always easy. It can often be difficult or scary. And to frame for you the consequences of what a no could look like, I think it's impactful, helpful to share a story of, we see here Isaiah said yes to it, but what's an example of someone maybe who understood the calling but didn't have the courage to say yes? It's one of my favorite stories from Randy Alcorn. He tells of a prominent businessman he knew. It had a huge impact on his community, used his wealth to advance God's kingdom, to look after the poor. So he's on his deathbed, his family's gathered around him, and he just begins to sob uncontrollably. And they ask him, Dad, you had this impact, why are you crying? And he says, years ago, Jesus called me into full-time ministry, but I was scared because I didn't know I was going to be able to provide for my family financially. I didn't feel like I'd innately be good at it, and so I didn't answer that calling, and I stuck with business. And now I'm afraid to have to stand before him and tell him I ignored his calling my entire life. Now, the point here isn't that, full-time ministry as a pastor is better than business. No, both are equally anointing if it's what God's called you to. And so when we do have the courage to answer God, miraculous things happen, and we can know that he's always going to provide for us in any context or calling he's called us to. It may not be easy. In fact, it probably will be difficult, but I guarantee you it is scarier and less fun and definitely less fulfilling to say no to God's calling than any of the difficulties that would come with saying yes to it. And so that'd be my prayer for you today, is if you believe you feel like you know what God's calling is over your life, but you're struggling in saying yes to it, maybe you need to talk to some mentors. Maybe you need to pray. Hey, God, I need the courage to say yes to this. In fact, my book recommendation today, The Lion's Gate, it's by Stephen Pressfield. It's about the 6-Day War, and it's where Israel takes on a number of Arab countries, and they defeat them in 6 days, even though they were outnumbered at times 1 nation to 12. And their personnel, sometimes their soldiers were outnumbered 1 to 60, but they defeated them in 6 days. In fact, if you talk to some of the strategicians, what is someone who studies strategy? I don't know. You can put it in the comments section. They really say they won it in the first day because their Air Force said yes to a crazy mission, Operation Mohed, where in about 90 seconds through this crazy plan, they pushed all their planes out at the same time and they destroyed 90% of the enemy Air Force in about 90 seconds on that first day of the war. And it ended up being the turning point of the war. And it happened because those pilots said yes to something that seemed impossible, but that God blessed. We're out of time, but I'd love to hear any book recommendations you have. Manna fam, I look forward to seeing you tomorrow as we close out our study of Isaiah 6:8.